What is inspiration in D&D 5e? Where do you get it? What do you do with it? Why does my DM never give it out? Hi, I'm Russell Kirkby, and this is my role-playing game channel, Sidario, where we talk about role-playing games with a general focus on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. My goal is to help players with a series of videos that cover the basics of Dungeons & Dragons, the core game mechanics, and how to relate those to actual role-playing. So if you've ever looked at a D&D 5e character sheet, you'll notice that there's a little box in the top right-hand corner called Inspiration, and if you're new to D&D 5e, you might be wondering what that is. The rules for inspiration can be found on page 125 of the Player's Handbook, and they're summarized in just 3 short paragraphs. Basically, as written, inspiration is a reward that a DM can give a player for good role-playing, which can then be spent to gain advantage on an attack roll, a saving throw, or a skill check. A DM could give inspiration for good role-playing, for clever tactics, for cunning use of the context and the scenario, the elements in the scene, for playing their character really well, for really understanding their ideals and their bonds and their flaws and playing those out in the scene. The DM might also give inspiration for really brave or clever maneuvers that might be risky, but otherwise were in character and made the game more exciting and fun for the other players. What kind of situations would you want to use inspiration in? How useful is it? Well, if you absolutely need to succeed on an attack roll or a saving throw or a skill check, having advantage on the roll is not to be sneezed at. Here are some examples of how you might use inspiration. You're fighting the Mad Wizard. One of your companions is down to 0 hit points. They've failed 2 death checks already. You've got to make a medicine check to keep them alive. You're breaking into a vault. You've got to time your lockpicking check between the mobile patrols. If you roll a 1, your DM might be really mean like I am, and you might break your tools. You're escaping from the dragon's lair. The building is crumbling around you. You jump out the window. You're surfing down the scree. You have to make an athletics check just to survive. Now might be a good time to spend that inspiration. In all 3 of these examples, the player is using their inspiration to try and mitigate some kind of dire situation. Now, to be fair, a player can use their inspiration on any attack roll or saving throw or skill check, but it's probably a good idea to try and save those things up to use them wisely on a really dire, life-threatening situation. So the second way that you can use inspiration is that you can gift your inspiration to another player for good role-playing or clever thinking or something that's fun that you really liked, something that impressed you. They might be using their flaws or their bonds or their ideals in some unique way that you think is cool. Some DMs hand out inspiration like candy, and the main problem with this approach is that some players begin to feel entitled to it. So the whole point of inspiration, in my view, is twofold. On the one hand, you're creating a kind of motivation for the players to actually roleplay. And on the other hand, it's about giving the players a mechanic that operates a bit like willpower or luck or hero points or fate points to give you a sense that you can do heroic stuff. I mean, you're supposed to be the heroes of the story. You might often get inspiration from your dungeon master when you do something really clever, really innovative, or really meaningful. These moments will differ from DM to DM, from player to player, to group. You'll know these moments because they'll be literally inspired. Next, I'm going to give you some tips on etiquette before answering one final question on inspiration. Now, if you're checking out the links below, please subscribe and don't forget to hit the alert button if you want to get more of these types of videos. DMs generally don't like players that beg, not for gold, not for XP, not for magic items, and definitely not for inspiration. Instead of saying to your DM, "Do I get inspiration for that?" every 5 minutes, maybe you want to include a description of how you're using your bond or your flaw or your trait into your description of what your action is so that it's clear that you're role-playing your character. So an example of this might be, "I compassionately hold out my hand to the downtrodden beggar and offer my gold." Or, for example, "My emotional bond gets the better of me as I rush into the fray in defense of my village." This is a subtle cue to your DM that you're actually role-playing your character, that you know your bonds and your traits and your flaws, and they're not just something cosmetic on your character sheet. This gives the DM a real pause for thought and the ability to think about whether or not you deserve to have some inspiration. Now, you can only have one usage of inspiration stored at a time. That's why you have that little checkbox over in the top corner of your character sheet. And you can't do anything with it except for spend it or pass it on to your fellow players. So if your DM regularly gives out inspiration, maybe you want to consider handing out your inspiration to the other players too. We were talking earlier about how to use your inspiration wisely and how you might want to save it up for those dire circumstances when there's a life-threatening situation and things are getting a bit treacherous. It's the big dragon at the end of the campaign, for example. But on the other hand, there's a style of gaming where you might have inspiration a bit more regularly. You might pass it off to another player, and then that gives you the opportunity to earn more inspiration. So actually, tactically, it might be better to give your inspiration to a fellow player than to actually use it yourself, because then you've got two players with inspiration, and they can always give it back to you. So I like to give inspiration to people when they role play in some sort of significant way that actually is coming from their character, that really shows an understanding of who their character is and some sort of character arc and development. I also like to give inspiration to those players who are coming to role playing maybe for the first time, and they're just dipping their feet in the water and they're trying it out. And you want to encourage them to keep doing that. As a DM, you can gauge people's strengths and weaknesses pretty quickly, and it's not hard for you to figure out where their comfort zones are. So this is where you can use inspiration to really make some sort of effective change in your game, where you can throw them inspiration when they cross outside their comfort zone. They do something that's unexpected, and they start to learn that when they do these unexpected things, you're going to give them inspiration. After you've gauged the player's experience and you've worked out where their strengths and weaknesses are, now you can find ways of giving them inspiration that encourages them to work on their weaknesses. So if you've got players who are a little bit tentative about role-playing, and you can bring them out of their shells with a little bit of inspiration every time they do some role-playing. On the other hand, you might have players that are really good at role-playing, but they suck at combat, and maybe they're playing a tactician or a combat master or something, and they just don't really try to think about tactics. Well, maybe when they do try, that's when you give them inspiration. There's lots of other examples, but the point really is that you give inspiration for in the areas of weakness that the players have rather than in their strengths, because it's too easy for them. You're trying to inspire them. You want to see something inspired from them. Under any situation, when a player surprises you with something that is literally inspired, you should be giving them inspiration for that, because it's inspired. That's the whole point. That's why it's called inspiration.
No, who is this?
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Hello, Internet.
We're here.
Are we on? Is everybody hearing us?
Well, it looks like we're on, and I could hear
right.
the video a minute ago, so I'm hoping that we can be heard, seen and heard. That'd be helpful.
That would be helpful. Well, hello, Internet, and welcome to the game. If you're just joining us, we are a tabletop talk show and podcast brought to you by Dungeon Studios. We go beyond live play and dive deep into every topic from session zeros to campaign heroes, and today we'll be talking about Currencies. With lively debates and thoughtful analysis and plenty of laughs, our weekly podcast is the perfect companion for any D&D fan. We stream live and interact with our chat on Facebook every Monday, almost every Monday, at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, and 2 p.m. New Zealand time.
Right.
Tonight, we have with us the ever illustrious Russell. That's you.
Fuck. You're
And
talking
me.
about me.
I am
you.
Giddis, yes. And tonight, not with us again is Doc. And I'm going to say that he is not with us because they need his fabulous face to mint the new special silver dollar. I think it would be a very good, I think he's got a good face. He's got a very good, like angular, I don't know. I like his face.
Good for stamping.
Yes. So, how are you tonight? Today for you?
Today, for me, well, I'm expecting a phone call today, so it might come through in the middle of the stream. Let us hope not. It's a very important phone call. I can't miss it. So if I disappear for whatever reason, what I'll probably do is just put myself on mute and then wander out of shot if that happens. And then I'll be straight back again the minute this shouldn't take very long. I have to give someone a credit card number.
Oh.
So it's not a big deal.
Yes, make sure you put
really,
yourself on mute.
Yeah, right. Yeah. These fuckers in the government, they have like a window between certain hours that they allow you to deal with them. And so I've called them already. I thought I would just get straight through earlier. Ha
ha ha, of course.
You have to leave a message and then they get back to you. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we'll see.
yeah, besides that, I'm pretty good.
All right. Well, that's good. Thank you for letting us know, and then I will just be my awkward self all by myself while you go deal with that.
Probably won't even happen,
Yeah.
to be fair now.
Yeah.
I reckon it's getting a bit late, but we'll see. We'll see how we go.
Okay.
Anyway, let us be on with the show.
Yes, let's start the show off with, we do have a little bit of nerd news. I've been trying to tailor the nerd news to just D&D and or other tabletop role-playing games, because that's really what our show is about. And we could talk forever about like all the different movies and shows and things that are going on, and there's just so much there. So what I did find though is that on here's the thing is, sorry, I paused because my brain just went because I don't think I actually clarified if it was D&D Beyond's website or if it's Wizards' website, but I'm pretty sure Wizards is now, they're just on D&D Beyond. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think D&D Beyond is just their website now.
They own it for sure. Yeah, they purchased it a little while ago now.
Right. So my understanding is that they are moving away from physical D&D books. You can no longer get them on their website. You can get hybrid bundles where you get the physical book and the digital book, but it's only
you have to buy the hybrid.
Yes, you have to buy the hybrid if you want the physical book. Now,
cheeky fuckers.
I know. And here's the thing is, I mean, you can still get physical books wherever you get physical books normally, right? It's not like they're discontinuing them or anything. They're just using
But they are putting the price up.
That's
like
right.
30% or something, or 20%.
They did bring the price up, and they're basically forcing you, if you're going to purchase from their site, that you're going to digital. And I am curious, especially, folks in the chat, let us know how you feel about this, because I think there's going to be a camp of people that are very, there's some of us who love the physical things because we collect them or because we don't trust the government, and like I just want my physical, if I paid for it I'm gonna have my physical copy. Like there's that camp that I think will really not like this. And
that's reasonable, isn't it? Don't you think?
I'm in that camp because I like my physical stuff. But what's funny is when I don't know if you remember this, but so Netflix, when they had, all you could do was get DVDs from them, and then they had made an announcement that they were moving away from DVDs to digital, and there was this uproar, and everybody was like, what? You can't do that. And guess what? They did it. they just didn't do it like right then. They changed everything up, and they guess what? We're all watching Netflix. It's all digital. We don't get
Right.
DVDs anymore from them,
It's
and
true. Yeah.
we like it. I'm pretty
All
sure
those
we like it.
That's right. All those poor companies that were producing DVD players and
Yeah.
discs and such that all probably went out of business. All those poor old, the video outlets, the video stores we used to go to and hire tapes and cassettes and discs and
All of that.
games, and they're all gone.
Yeah.
But hey,
I mean, I remember when we had, all our Disney VHS tapes, and then we had to get rid of them because we had to get all the DVDs. And then we got rid of those
right,
because we had to get all the Blu-rays. And now we just have the digital, and it's great. So far, we haven't had to change that format. We're still just purchasing things digitally.
right,
And I
right,
think people nowadays enjoy that. You get it instantly. You have it all the time as long as you have that whatever console or whatever it is that you're using to purchase it.
right.
Um, I don't know. So I'm curious to see how this shakes out because I feel like there's going to be a bunch of the people who are grumbling about it that eventually will come around, like the Netflix
Yeah,
folks.
yeah,
I mean, they've got all the digital
absolutely.
dice, they're doing digital maps and digital minis, and now
Yeah.
you're just going to get your books digitally. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it
really
also,
interesting.
the thing with D&D Beyond is, well, first of all, they're building their new 3D tabletop
Hmm.
at the moment,
I think
and I
it's
don't know
their
whether that's going to
VTT.
be right. Their VTT, and whether that's going to be part of D&D Beyond, whether it's going to replace D&D Beyond. I really hope it doesn't, because D&D Beyond is just fine the way it is. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And more importantly, from my point of view, I've been messing around with the Above VTT, which was built by some of the developers from D&D Beyond, who did it as a personal side project, and they released it as an open source plugin for D&D Beyond, and it works, and it's fucking great, and it's probably the best VTT for D&D, at least for D&D Beyond, that I've ever seen. I really like it. Um, and is D&D, is are Wizards going to scrap that, force them to close it, and take over so they can have their 3D real, what is it
Yeah.
called, Unreal Engine, blah 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 thingy that you can only run on your gaming computer,
Yeah.
full of microtransactions and so forth. Because the Above VTT is really nice and clean, and it really works really well. We don't need this nonsense, and I really object to it, honestly. But anyway, that's just my point of view.
Yeah, that's the thing is I do have trouble with not necessarily the microtransactions, but just D&D is so accessible as long as you have like the player's handbook and the dungeon master's guide, you can
Right,
just do it on pen and paper and it's free and anybody can do it.
right,
And like now we're getting to a point where, and I'm pretty sure we've kind of covered some of this stuff in previous episodes, but yeah, we're getting to a point where you have to have a good computer, which is not
right,
cheap. You have to
right.
have online access. That's not cheap.
Yeah, not everyone can have that. I mean, I used to play in Papua New Guinea, where I was raised, and first of all, we only had a couple of books. We didn't have access to any stores at all. You couldn't
Mhm.
order the books. And so we only had a few of them. And then when we got sick of that stuff, we made our own shit. We created our own games. We wrote our own role playing games and did our own thing. And it feels to me like Wizards of the Coast is trying to brainwash everybody into thinking that you absolutely need this system in order to do any role playing.
Yeah.
And it's just wrong.
Yeah.
So,
It's
anyway,
the keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing, but with
yeah,
technology.
yeah, it's competitive sort of business. Yeah.
I have, you
Don't
know,
like it.
I have a really hard time with digital dice though. Like of all the things for D&D that's digital, I think it's because I'm such a dice goblin. I I I don't know. I can't my brain can't fathom paying money and not having physical clickety clacks in my hand to roll,
Right.
and they
Right.
only live in my computer. I refuse
I would
to buy
never
them.
pay for digital dice. I mean, I barely even buy actual dice. I mean, I bought one packet of metal dice here that cost me 50 odd dollars, a while ago. And,
Hmm.
and they're nice, but they're really
Those are
fucking
nice.
hard to read.
Yeah.
But this one's really heavy, and I do like that about them. And Avery, our dear friend Avery, gave me this beautiful set of hollow golden dice that
Ooh.
he touched up for us, and they are fantastic. They apparently rolled really shitty for him, but they roll amazingly for me. I roll natural 20s on these things all the time. He hates it.
Nice.
So, yeah, I mean, I love these dice, but I would not go out and buy a packet of dice, not for anyone. I've got dice. I don't need any more dice. I mean, it's a weird obsession that
Oh
I don't
man.
understand. I kind of get it. They're like little magic tokens kind
Yeah.
of thing, but
I don't know. For me,
they
it's
generate
like
random numbers. That's what they do.
they're like collectibles. Like they make
Yeah,
them now with the liquid core. So
yeah,
it's like Pokemon. I gotta get them all. I gotta have a
yeah.
liquid core set. I gotta have the kind that has little baby mushrooms inside of them because
What do you do once you've got them?
I just keep them and I look at them and I'm happy.
Right. See, for me, I mean, I go out. I mean, obviously, I run a lot of games, so I see a lot of players, and a lot of players have lots and lots and lots of dice. I get to see them all
Hmm.
the time, so I just go and look at other
You just
people's
live
dice.
vicariously through them,
I
is what
don't
you're
have to
doing.
pay for them. I can pick them up and play with other people's dice if I want to. But
Yeah.
you know,
Oh
anyway,
yeah. No, I've got a whole like my next character that I'm gonna play because the which we're gonna get to with weekend games, but the campaign that I play in is
yeah,
supposedly gonna be ending soon, and so I've got a whole like wish list of dice that are
right.
like suited to this new character that I'm just waiting to purchase until it's time because there's no
Dun,
point
dun,
in
dun.
purchasing them now. I'll wait,
Yep,
but I really
fair
want to buy
enough.
them now. So.
Fair enough.
Anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
actually, that's a great lead in. Unless you have any other nerd news, that's a great lead in to your weekend games. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I mean, weekend games. What have I been up to? Well, last night we played The Burning Path, and our wonderful adventurers got on a ship, and they're off to go and try and sink a Barrack Isle envoy wizard ship of their own, which is going to be interesting for them because they've kind of got a plan. They arrived on an island at the end of the mission, or the end of the session rather. They haven't actually got to the ship yet, where they're going to try and lure this Barrack Isle wizard envoy boat to them by putting out a distress smoke signal. But as they arrived there, they got attacked by a giant crab, which they were kind of suspecting was going to happen. But it didn't take the paladin out twice, despite being a challenge level it wasn't a deadly encounter. It was a fair encounter actually,
mhm.
but I rolled ridiculously high numbers with
With that really good dice.
my digital dice,
Oh,
but just the standard D&D Beyond ones, none of them fancy ones.
yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting. What else is going on? We had the week off on Vampire the Masquerade. I think we had like 3 players sick this week, so we
Oh,
just paused it for a week. What else we got? Sunfall on Wednesday night. Oh, like so they're in the middle of a crypt, and they've been fighting. Oh, this was great. This was fantastic.
oh, I can't
Avery,
wait
I
to
don't
hear
know
this
where
now.
he is. So I the party come up against this red wizard of the Barrack Isle envoy in this crypt for whatever reasons. It doesn't really matter, but they're all like, yeah, we're gonna kill this guy. We're up, they've already killed like an apprentice, a bunch of guards, a stone golem
Wow.
using their earth elemental, where they did that the previous session, and then they come up against this guy. Oh, and they fought a bunch of zombies too. And this wizard comes out and takes Avery's character and casts Gaius on them and turns him into basically his ally. And so Avery
I am
and
actually very familiar with this spell, and now I will
right,
tell you a story when this is done.
it was fucking hilarious. So Avery, he at first he was really reticent to sort of play his character against the party. Um, because he was really kind of concerned that everyone was going to hate him for it, and everybody sort of was really kind, and they were like, "No, you just got to play your character. You got to do what you got to do. We don't mind, even if we die. You're playing your character. It's blah blah." And over the course of the adventure of the session, he got more and more into it until he started enjoying it, and I saw this transition in him as he went from like absolutely hating this scenario until he sort of was actually quite excited about it, and I think he was having fun. So that was cool.
That's awesome.
So Yeah, that was great fun. And Gaius, what a spell that is, hey?
Yo, yeah. So I love that. Who is this? This was Avery.
This was
That
Avery.
you could see as the DM see the moment when like Avery's like leaning into this and now really
Yeah,
enjoying it. That's so
yeah,
rewarding, I think, as a DM.
yeah.
But so my players, I have a cleric who's a Tempest domain cleric, uh,
Okay.
and he has chosen to kind of play his character like very devout, dumb devout, right? Like just following because the need to follow. And
Right.
his deity is actually like, in my world, his deity is like what we call one of the ascended. Originally, there were only two goddesses, and then
Mm-hmm.
that's what caused the calamity. And out of the calamity, 10 individuals that fought in the calamity were ascended into the next set of gods. And then from there
Right.
the deities grew, you know, and there were more. But his deity is one of the ascended.
Sort of
And
like elder gods type of
yeah.
thing.
But due to the fact she was her this goddess was very instrumental in the downfall of the two, you know, or in the calamity. And so because of that, like I wouldn't say her name was stricken from the record, but just there's been a lot of history that I'm not going to get into deep in the weeds about that, but there's a lot of
Right.
history with this deity. And because her followers tend to go mad now, um her name's kind of just been stricken from the record. Followers are kind of like, "Ooh," like I don't know if we're gonna trust you or follow you, or
Right.
you know. And so he has kind of played his character like, yeah, I'm a little crazy, but I am devout as fuck, and I'm gonna spread the word, and I want people to know about her. And
Right.
so for those of you who aren't familiar with this spell, Geas, I'm going to read this. You place a magical command on a creature that you can see within range, forcing it to carry out some service or refrain from some action or course of activity as you decide. If the creature can
Mm-hmm.
understand you, it must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or become charmed by you for the duration. While the creature is
Right.
charmed by you, it takes psychic damage each time it acts in a manner that's counter to your instructions, but no more than once a day. A creature that can't understand you is unaffected by the spell. And I'm going to
Right.
keep reading. You can issue any command you choose, short of an activity that would result in certain death. Should you issue a suicidal command, the spell ends, and so on and so forth. Okay. But basically, he has been using this spell to kind of create a cult following, if you will, like wherever they
Uh-huh.
travel, the inn, you know, whatever inn they stay at, the
Right.
tavern owner, he casts it on them and spreads the word of Zeboim, and you will love Zeboim. And like, so I
Right.
have had to keep a tally of every single person that he has geased
Oh man.
because you know, D&D time is wonky, right? So like we've been playing
Yeah.
for years,
Yeah.
but it's maybe not even a month yet. So
Right. Right.
there's all these people that are all of a sudden coming out of the woodworks going, yeah, I love this goddess. Like,
Right.
even though everyone else is like, she's crazy. You don't want to follow her. So it's just, it's played a really interesting, um, it's done some interesting things to my world that they haven't quite seen the full effect of yet. So
Right.
it's a great spell. I love that he's just wiping out, he's brainwashing everyone. So
That's great.
I
That's
love it.
great. I mean, that's what it's for.
Yeah.
And what's interesting for my players is they're like, so these red wizards actually have this spell up their sleeves.
Yeah.
So this is yet another way that they might well have been controlling the general population and various other people.
Right.
So yeah,
And
all
you
fun
know
and
what
games.
else? Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm going to take this a little bit further. So my
Mm-mm.
players, I think I might have talked about this somewhere in a prior episode or in our chats, but they have pretty much adopted like a 10-year-old girl into their party. So as a DM, I'm literally having to play this 10-year-old NPC all the time with them because they refuse to get rid of
Right.
her.
Right.
And at one point, the guy that I told you about, he's geised her to believe in Zeboim as well. But before
Right.
that happened, so there's my other player. She's a rogue. She plays a male rogue. She's an old man, though. She plays an old
Right.
man. So
Oh, cool.
this old man has taken this little girl under his wing to say like, I'm going to teach you how to do rogue stuff. and
Right.
you're going to be like my little apprentice. Well, then the other guy comes in and guises her to say, well, but I want you to believe in my goddess. And so there, it's almost like they're doing like this parental, like,
Some competition or
yeah, parental competition of like, no, this kid is going to be my protege. No, this kid's going to be my protege.
right, right.
And at one point, he did a divine intervention, and it act and
Worked.
he was in his bedroom, and he was trying to cast some kind of spell and create like a little shrine in his room, and he wanted
Right.
to understand like kind of this thing about this plot that he wanted to know. And so he cast divine intervention, and the girl ended up being in his room with him because he was like, I want you to see this shrine that I made. And then he cast divine intervention, and it worked. And so I was
Right.
like, oh no. So this is where
Uh-oh.
the turning point happened with this little girl character, because up until this point, the rogue had been taking full responsibility for this 10-year-old. And so
Right.
whenever we leveled up, I would level her up as a rogue because that's her protege. But then
Right.
that
Yeah.
divine intervention happened, plus the Geas right before, and I was like, oh no. Okay, now she's got to take a level in cleric. And from this point, every time you guys level, you two will duke it out to see how I level up this NPC that I got
Right.
to
Which
play until the end of the
direction they
campaign.
go.
So
That's great.
it is so fun. It's like a custody battle that I'm having to D&D. It is so it's so
Right.
wild. But
That makes sense.
but they refuse to get rid of her. So I don't know. It's kind
Right.
of fun. I kind of get to play and DM at the same time.
I don't have as quite a complex situation, but we do have our party. One of in the Veingate Chronicles, they came across this 10-year-old, or he appeared to be a 10-year-old drow boy living under a bridge in the Underdark, who turns out to be the abandoned and exiled son of the matriarch of Abnog Gur. And they took him on, and they've
So
been
he's a
training him up.
prince?
He's literally a prince, but he's been thrown out of
Okay.
the matriarchal society, basically because he's a boy and he represents problems to their matriarchy.
Yeah.
So yeah, they sort of took him on board, and so his name's Zim. So Zim is always kind of in the backs of their mind, and the matriarchy have tried to track him down, and they've sent monsters after him. What are they called? Those nasty Dragoliths, I think they're called, the drow
Yeah.
demons that they summon.
That sounds
So
right.
yeah, all fun and games, but nothing quite like what you're describing with the custody battle.
Yeah.
Various party members have tried to train him, and he's learned a lot, but it's not really a custody battle. I think they sort of share custody, although mostly it's Adric who. You see, Adric lost his child. He's this dwarf, and there's this curse upon the dwarves of the Banakaya, where they're very low fertility, and so
Oh.
he had a child, and it was born as stone as part of the curse,
Oh
and
wow.
so yeah, yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other story that leads to some very interesting stuff. But I'm not going to go there because I don't want to bore your pants off.
I was
So,
gonna say we got time. You can go in there.
well, I mean, we did have a really awesome episode where they went back to his home city in the Underdark, um, and he decided, for whatever reason, that he was going to try and break into the tomb where his baby child was kept, where his stone child was kept. And he did this against all orders and everything. And in doing so, he also put on this artifact called the Mask of Moradin, which partly confirmed him as the avatar of Moradin. But the problem with the
Wow.
curse of this mask, the Mask of Moradin is cursed so that anyone who wears it, yes, on the one hand, they may become the avatar of Moradin, but on the other hand, their name and everything about them is forgotten to the dwarven race.
Mm-hmm.
So when he came back out of the tomb, having found his child, and after Dumathoin, the god of death of the dwarves, had restored his child back to life in the tomb, because we role-played through that whole thing, and we all cried, and it was
Oh
very
man.
sad, powerful stuff. And he comes out with this baby, and he hands it over to his wife, and his wife recognizes the child, but she doesn't recognize her husband, who she hasn't seen for like several years, and they'd just sort
Oh
of been
wow.
together the previous night. He'd returned and been together with her, and then he'd gone off to the tomb and come back with the baby, but he'd worn the mask, and now everyone's forgotten who he is. So the baby will grow up without its father, with nobody in his village
Wow.
knowing who he is. And it was just sad. We all cried. It was a really hard
Wow.
sequence. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was one of the best role-playing sequences we've done, I think.
Yeah, kudos,
Yeah,
man. That
very.
sounds good. I would want to play through. I mean, as sad as that is, I
Yeah,
would want to play through something that's that deep.
it was it was deep, and it
Yeah.
was in the dark, so it was especially deep.
Yeah. uh,
Yeah,
well, so I wanted to ask you, do we have a Russell's unsolicited opinion on
opinion
everything
on anything.
segment?
Well, I kind of thought of something, and I kind of want to talk about it, but I don't think now is the time. I
Okay.
think I'll hold off on that till I've had a better chance to think about the ramifications of my discussion on this matter. I have a habit of being overly opinionated on certain things
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and I don't want to blow my opportunity to do this right.
So what you're
So
saying is we're going to get your unsolicited but what's the word I'm thinking of? Not procured, but there's a word I'm curated. Your
curated,
curated opinion.
right, right. Sooner or later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I
All
think
right.
so. But for now, I don't. I got nothing.
Well,
Nothing.
see, here's where we're in a conundrum. And maybe this is just going to
Mhm.
be a short episode because
Mm.
it's the week of 4th of July here in the US, but so we can make it a short episode. But this is about the time where we would take a break. And we're about 36 minutes in, so probably we'll just go ahead and take a break. And then after the break,
After
we
the
will be
break.
talking about currencies, which is our topic for tonight.
Yeah,
What do you do with currencies in your game? This is going to be a lot of fun.
yeah.
And then after that, we're going to do some weekly world building, and we're going to world build some currencies. So this is something I've never
Cool.
actually done before.
Ah,
World build currencies. So I'm really interested in doing
right.
this exercise. So okay, folks, everyone, strap in because we are featuring a music video by Black Rose for the break. It's very heavy, I love it. And then we also have our deception checks, which are always a lot of fun, featuring our own voice actors and our CEO from Dungeon Studios.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. So everybody enjoy. Please come back after the break so that you can be a part of our discussion and help us world build some currencies. All right?
Right.
See you soon.
Alrighty. We'll see you soon.
All right.
Who are you? What do you think you're doing here? Ships, you say? Well, sure, there's wrecked ships all over these icebergs. And yes, we may have had a hand in it, but I assure you it is all for a good cause. It is all to feed the demon of the icebergs, of course. It is our holy duty to do so. And although it may come at a cost, well, for those other people, we have been entrusted with this task and shall see it done by whatever means necessary. Thinking to stop us? Good luck. Oh no, not because of us, because of the demon itself. Oh, do you feel that? Now you've done it. She must be waking. And I bet she's hungry. Travel to the frigid setting of the Guardian Icebergs and more unique settings from the world of Inaron. Follow our socials to keep up to date on all upcoming projects.
Have all the mind flayers come to light? Tentacle faces, psionic blight. Harness the patrons, a crew, it's time to idle. Suck out your mind. High intellect, what do they have to gain? Illithid servants, the elder brain. Calling the weak that they find like time to idle. Suck out your mind. I'm addicted to the way your mind is played right there before me. I'm an aberration creeping in the underdark, just lurking. I share everything with Elder Brain. We speak with telepathy, lawful evil. Eat your brain, I drop your HP down to nothing. Show me what's inside your mind, behind that pretty face. I can't dominate monsters, but they take once a day. And you can lead your buddies to me, make them wish they fled. I'm in their heads inciting dread, and now they're wondering. Wondering!
Hey there, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. What can we do for you?
Hey, I'm Vic Mascatoni, and my crew and I, we got us a heist up there at old Aldor's place in a couple of nights. Now,
All right.
we're trying to slay the dragon on this one, if you know what I mean. So what I need is a few high-quality lockpicks, you know. None of that cheap crap that you sell the commoners. What's a rogue got to do to get a good lockpick? What do you got for me?
Well, we don't sell parts, but if you're needing help getting into something, we can send a technician out.
Ooh, that's even better. So I tell you what, you send them up to Aldor's, right? You bring the lockpicks, right? We'll cut you guys in on the heist. We'll do it 50-50.
All right. Is this heist in a car, a house? What are we
It's up at old
out of?
Aldor's place. He's sitting on a mountain of gold up there, and we just need to get in there and fill up our bags with as much of that gold as we can. You know what I mean? But you bring your lockpicks, you show up, we'll split it 60-40.
I'm not sure our insurance would cover us sending our technicians.
I tell you what, I'll slide you $2,500 up front. Nobody's got to know nothing. You come with the picks.
Well, I'm not the technician. I'm just the dispatcher.
Well, get me to the technician. He might want to make $2,500.
Okay. What's the address?
And that's going to be up at Way.
Okay. In which city?
What are we calling here? We're calling Portland, right? Yeah, it's going to be in Portland.
You said way?
That's correct. It's exactly how it sounds, ma'am. Yeah.
All right. Is there a business nearby? I'm not able to pull that address up.
Well, you wouldn't be able to pull it up because it's old Aldor's place. And he keeps it under tight lock and key. Why we need the picks.
I don't think we'd be able to assist.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. I'll go on down there to the next locksmith and see if they want to make some money. You have a good night, huh?
You too.
Gotta hit with your middle spring as the hostage for the things I do.
Hello there, adventurer. I see you're interested in the vast wealth of knowledge I've acquired and stored over the years. That's fantastic. Come in, out of the sand and the sun. Take a look around. It's not every day such an interesting and willing group of guests stumble upon my library. Feel free to explore. It's been years since the last group came through here, and they looked much less promising than you. I'm sure you'll find all sorts of interesting things, if you know where to look. But be warned, this library holds more than just books and scrolls, and only the worthy are allowed to leave with the knowledge that they find. So I suppose the real question is, do you have what it takes to impress me?
Oh, it's too easy. Killing off a player's level 1 PC. No longevity. Falling off too high a tree. No more HP. No more HP. You better please. Preparing battlegrounds, level 1's in the crowd. Not many are allowed, one crit could bring them down. So squishy from the mold, they're weak but very bold. Took hours to propose, but seconds to dispose. Who starts this alone, you sadist? Yeah, they'll get ground to great dust.
Hello, hello, Internet. We are back.
We are back.
We are back.
We're
And you
back.
know what I
Back.
realized over the break?
What did you realize over the break?
I forgot to tell everyone that if you enjoy listening to us chatter about
Right.
D&D, about nerd news,
Yeah,
everything,
all
please
that stuff.
like our show, share our show with your friends, with your groups, spread the word, because we're a joy to listen to, I think.
Well, I think so. I think we're a joy to listen to. That's right.
Yeah.
Especially
So-
you, probably more so than I am.
Well, you know what that is? I think it's just because I smile and laugh a lot. Anyway,
It's true.
you know,
I
that's
frown and make faces.
well, I've been told by my friends that it's just like this instinctual thing I do in response to almost anything, even if I don't necessarily find it funny. I just will laugh. Like, I don't know why I do it, but so yeah. That's just that. But anyway, folks, yes, please like and share. Come find us on all our socials. We're trying to grow our presence on YouTube. When we post our podcasts, you can find them on all the podcasting platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not as smooth as I would like it to be, but there's that. So anyway, all right, let's move into our topic because I am really excited to talk about this.
Right.
We're going to talk about currencies in tabletop role-playing games and or D&D. And
Right.
I thought we should at least start off with the basics for anyone who's not familiar with them, right? So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
or just for newbies or new DMs, baby DMs. But the standard currency across the board seems to be copper, silver, electrum-ish, gold, and platinum, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is the thing that I think a lot of people have trouble with is the conversion rates of all of this coinage, right? Because I mean, I'm sure people understand you play D&D, you get loot and you can get odd amounts of like copper and silver and gold and it's like, but how much money do you really have, right? So, the way it was explained to me, the way that I understand it is 10 copper make a silver, 10 silver make a gold, 10 gold make a platinum. And that has made it super easy for me to remember. Electrum is the one that's the oddball because it's only worth like 5 of something. I'm trying to remember. It's like 5 copper make a silver. Is that it? We have the conversion thing
Five
here.
copper? No, no, 10 copper make a silver.
I'm sorry,
5
5 copper make an
electrum.
electrum. Or no, wait, what is it?
5 electrum makes a gold. That's the confusing one. It's the
That's,
electrum
see,
that
it
make
is
gold.
for this reason that Electrum like is banned in the
A
game
lot
that
of
I
people
play
ban
in.
electrum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't use Electrum either. It's just hard to remember the conversion rates. You're a little
It
blurry,
is.
Russell.
It is, and it's great for fucking with people. Oh, and blurry.
Yeah, just a bit.
Um, is that fixing itself at this point?
It might, maybe
No,
if you
still
sit back.
blurry.
But yeah, my
There we go.
my
Yeah.
my DM will usually threaten us like if we start asking about Electrum, he'll just threaten us with like TPKs and stuff because he's like, no,
Right.
never.
Right. A lot of people hate Electrum. I use Electrum in my game, but it's the currency of the ancient elves.
Right.
And so if you find Electrum pieces, well, actually, no, the elves still use it, but it is an ancient currency. But occasionally, I've got this thing where you'll find it on people that you wouldn't expect to find it on, and it's kind of a clue to suggest that those people are being paid off by the elves.
Or that they have some association with the elves.
Right, and people that you
Yeah.
wouldn't expect to be getting, so it's part of that whole mystery drama that we were sort of puzzles and things we were talking about. Why do these orcs have this currency? Aren't these
Right.
supposed to be the bad guys that hate the elves?
Yeah, and then
What's
there's a
going on
mystery to
here?
solve.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the standard, I guess, for D&D lore. And then
Right.
I would say across the board, I mean, I think even D&D Beyond kind of pushes this that your standard for any value is always gold. This is worth
Right.
this much gold. This piece of art that you
Right.
found is worth
Right.
this much gold. This shield you want to buy
Right.
is 10 gold. Everything kind of is priced in gold. So that
Right.
would
It's
be
the
like your
standard currency. Everything else is kind of set around that.
right. Like it's the
Yep.
dollar and then everything is the
Yeah.
coinage.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's generally the way I think it works too.
right.
But I mean, it's funny though, because gold is actually a really expensive currency. I mean, at least in my game, a gold piece would keep a peasant alive for a month.
Oh, wow.
A
Yeah,
gold piece is a huge amount of money, and
it is.
if you lived on the streets and you ate insects on a stick or something, from a street vendor, you could survive quite a long time on gold,
Yeah.
on a gold piece. Silver is what most people pay for stuff with.
hmm
To be fair, but that's in my game. How does it work for you?
Well, I've been kind of sticking with the, gold is the standard, but after doing the research for this show, I have
Mhm.
really put a lot of thought into how I'm going to do this moving forward because I do think that there is a lot, like you said, you can use currency to add depth into your world where there's
Right.
lore around it and now there's
Yeah.
mystery if this show, like there's a lot you can
Right.
do with currency that I'd not
Yeah.
really considered before.
Right.
So I think I'm going to be changing things up. Right now it's just vanilla and everything's gold, but that's going to
Right.
change.
Well, I've got two whole different sets of currency I'd like to talk about today. One is my currency for Sidariel, which is my D&D campaign.
hmm
The other one is a whole other set of currency I designed for my far future science fiction campaign,
Okay.
which I haven't yet played yet, to be honest, but it's in the works and has been for a very long time.
Cool. Yeah, I
So
can't wait to hear about this when we get to like
when
the homebrew
yeah,
section.
when we get to
Yeah.
that, we'll talk about that then. So yeah,
Yeah.
cool. All
But
right.
okay,
Tell us more
so
about currencies. What have you
just so you
discovered?
have the basics of or the basic understanding of currency.
Right.
Now, if you want to give it a little flavor without changing just the currency, you
Right.
can just give like certain denominations like different physical descriptions, like yeah, it's silver, but it's not just like a flattened piece of
Right.
silver. Is there, some kind of image on one side, on both
Right.
sides, um
You might have a hole drilled through it so you can hang it on strings around your neck.
exactly, and then what would be the reason for that? Like, why do you have to have it
Right.
strung up and put around your neck? Is there something
Right.
about that society that like they need to carry their money around their
Right.
necks? I don't know.
Well, and I was born in Papua New Guinea, and I was raised largely over there. And historically, the Papua New Guinean currency is called kina, and that's based on the kina shell, because ancient Papua New Guinean people used kina shells as currency, and you will find kina shells all the way up into the highlands of Papua New Guinea, where the people don't even see the sea.
Wow.
Right? So they're spread across the whole country because these shells were their trade
There was
currency.
currency. Yeah, that's
You
so
know?
cool. And that's yes, I mean definitely take inspiration from the real world for sure.
Yeah.
But even just not only physical descriptions, but what they're called, right? Like, um, maybe regionally silver pieces are called. I don't know. We're just gonna say dime because it's silver.
Right.
This region calls it a dime, but over in this region they call silver pieces something else because
Right.
it's got their queen's image on it or something. Maybe
Right. Right.
it's called a royal dollar. I don't know, whatever.
Right. I mean, there's lots of historical words like crowns, marks.
Hmm.
What else have they got? Obviously pieces.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean all that sort of stuff, and you can look them up. Just go onto Google and type in ancient currencies, and you'll get lists of them. And there's some great names you can use for your currencies.
Yeah. And then you can
Yeah.
even make some of them like special pieces.
Oh
Like,
yes.
we have certain like silver dollars that they're very special and they're
Right.
so you could name certain gold pieces the gold double eagle because it was
Right.
minted in this
Right.
area, and it's super special because it was minted in this area with two eagles on each side. I don't know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you can take standard currency and just give it a little bit of extra flavor, and that's it. And you've already done so much to like add to your world already.
Mm-hmm.
And then some examples. Okay, so I found out because these were really interesting. In Forgotten Realms, they
Yeah.
have Sembia replaces a copper piece with square iron steel pence, is what they're called. Instead of
Right.
coppers, square iron
Right.
steel pence.
Right.
They have triangular silver pieces called ravens. They have diamond shaped electrum pieces called harmarks or blue eyes, which I guess I'm curious, like, are all their elves blue eyed? Like, I don't know. That's interesting. Why do they call them blue
Yeah.
eyes?
Right.
Um, Five-sided gold pieces are called nobles. So yeah, just getting,
Right.
just from regular lore already, D&D lore, you can see the kind of depth that they've built into the currency just by
Right.
calling them something different.
Right. And it's immersive to use those terms.
Yeah. Or
Especially when in game when you're role playing with the bartender or whatever.
right. And then this is the other one. So Sembia doesn't mint platinum pieces, though they will accept all coinage. So that's another thing you can do in your world is you still have the standard currency, but what if certain
Mhm.
places just don't
Right.
take platinum,
Right.
or
Yeah.
I don't work with copper. That's beneath me. Like, we're not going to
Well,
take copper pieces.
right. And also things like platinum are really expensive. And you go up to a street vendor to buy an insect on a stick, and you hand them a platinum piece. Now they
Yeah,
don't have
how are we
change
going
for
to
that.
break that? Yeah.
Right, they don't have change for that. So how are you going to break that? You need to go to some sort of money changer, and this brings in ideas of things like banks, money changers, and so on and so forth. I mean, in my world, they don't even have banks. You have to go to a temple to do that type of thing, or certain other individuals might be able to do it. But on an individual, small scale basis, there's no big Chase Bank network.
Right. That's actually, yeah, that's really interesting because I've not thought about that. I haven't even put in my game, we don't have a banking system. But like if you play the Witcher video games, like they have banks. Like that makes a
Right.
lot of sense. There should be
Right.
banks.
Well, curiously, I mean, historically, it was the Knights Templar, as far as I'm aware, back in like 1307 through for about 200 years when they were at their height of their power. They were the first proper banking system where you could go to one of their temples in, say, Jerusalem, and give them a bunch of money, and they'd give you a piece of paper with a seal on it, and you could take that piece of paper and its seal all the way to Paris and hand it in, and they would give you money. And so they were the first sort of banking system, and that made them very unpopular in the long run, which is pretty much why they were destroyed in the end.
Right.
But yeah, people owed them a lot of money.
Ah.
So yeah, it's a great way. Currency brings in all sorts of other ideas, like of course loans and economies, and all of that financial garbage and verbiage,
Yeah.
words, lots of words.
I think you can say
Yeah.
verbiage or verbiage. I think both are
Verbal
acceptable.
verbiage of blah. Anyway, please continue with your
Okay.
research. It's fascinating.
So then I started thinking, okay, just to kind of really cement this in a newbie's mind, let's say, I wanted to look at other sources of media and fiction. Like, what did they do with their currencies? So Harry Potter's really popular, and they use bronze, silver, and gold, but they call them nuts or knuts. Honestly, I have to watch the movies because I can't remember if they called them knuts or nuts.
Right.
But it's spelled with a K, Knuts.
Right.
Sickles and galleons. I remember them saying
Right.
galleons. So,
Right.
Again, a really simple change, but
Right.
that's world building right there.
Yeah.
Star Wars and Star Trek, they use credits, right?
Yep.
So
A lot of
that
people use credits. A lot of science fiction is
all the
credits.
sci-fi stuff use credits or
Except
chits
for
or
my
something like
science
that.
fiction doesn't. Ha ha ha.
Waterworld, if you watch that movie Waterworld, like dirt was a
Right.
currency, because
Right.
there's
Right.
no land.
There was a game by Gary Gygax, Mythos. I've got it on my shelf, in fact, where they use a currency called the base unit currency, and in the words they use the word buck to stand for base unit currency. So everything's in bucks.
I
So
love
that's
that.
kind of interesting, right?
That's a really great play on words. I love that.
Yeah.
Helen says doubloons. Yes, you can totally do doubloons.
Doubloons. What's doubloons from, Helen? And
Isn't it like
buck,
pirate money, doubloons?
pirate money?
I thought.
You got me there.
Somebody tell us.
Somebody tell us. Helen, tell us where doubloons come from. Is that a Harry Potter reference?
Legend of Zelda, the game Legend of Zelda, did rupees. Sonic the Hedgehog did rings. So
Right.
anything can be a currency, and those are just some examples from modern day. So now, with that in mind, I thought, okay, let's talk about if you want to homebrew your currency. Like, you've got your game, and I'm like, nah, I'm too good for gold, or like, I want to do something different.
Right.
How
Too
do
good
we?
for gold.
Too good for gold. How do we homebrew currency? So
Right.
I thought, first of all, let's consider the region and the locale where the money is made, right? Not just where you spend it, but
Right.
where's this money getting made? I've never thought
Who's
about that in my
making it?
game. Who's making it? Is it
Right.
the dwarves? Is it the elves? Is it everybody? They're making their own type of money.
Does everybody use the same currency, or does every little kingdom have their own coinage?
Right. Like, that's really important to think of. What's the standard currency that probably like the common currency, but then maybe regionally, they have a little bit of their own that they spend within their own communities. Maybe they just trade. Maybe trade is their currency locally,
barter.
but then they spend money outside of their area. So there's that to consider. What's it made of, right? Like, depending on where it's made, they probably are using whatever resources they have.
Right. And what
to
about
make it.
alloys? We never talked about alloys either. I mean, modern currency is generally made out of alloys. We don't
That's
make
true.
anything out of one thing anymore.
That's
you
true.
know?
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that because I just think, medieval, it's like, oh, this is just copper. This is just silver. But yeah, you could totally make an alloy. That would be interesting. That would be a very special coinage.
And also, we've got potential for magical currencies in a D&D game.
This is true.
We have metals like mithril and adamantite,
Mm-hmm.
or adamantium, or whatever the fuck that shit's called.
That's true. I mean, you get all kinds of weapons and armor made out of it, but no one has made coinage out of it.
Coins, right? Why not?
Why not?
It's perfect. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So what's the currency made of? And then what's the currency worth? If you're going to homebrew currency, you got to think about those exchange rates and
Right.
what it's worth to people. Is it worth the same in all areas, or is it worth
Right.
less? It, like, the exchange rate. If I go to New Zealand, what's my money gonna
Right.
be like there or not?
Well, it'll be worth a lot more here, to be
Yeah.
fair. You can pay for one of my role playing games. One session in New Zealand will cost you almost 30 New Zealand dollars, but for an American playing on Zoom with me, you could get away with about 15 to 20 American dollars.
Ooh,
It's
that
a
is
lot
good
cheaper.
marketing. Why aren't you marketing more in the U.S.?
Right. Well, because our time zones suck, but that's
That's true.
I can stay up at all hours to run games for you if you want.
Yeah.
So sing
Well,
out.
good to know, folks. Everyone, good to know. U.S. dollars go a lot
Yeah.
more with Russell.
Well, I mean, this is also why Lord of the Rings was made in New Zealand. A lot of TV shows and
Oh.
movies get made here because our currency is worth nothing.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, so yeah, that's something to consider when it comes to building your currency. Like, what's it worth in various regions, and
Right.
the materials and the rarity. Like, is it a material that's in abundance, so you can make a
Right.
lot of it, or is
Inflation.
it inflation? Um, is your currency? Are there any collectible coins like
Yeah.
what we have now, or yeah?
Yeah. Well, I mean, another interesting historical fact, I mean, as far as I know, it was the Chinese that were the first people to invent paper currency. And it was Marco Polo who went to China and went, hey, what the fuck is this shit? And he went back and said, hey, I've got a good idea. Everyone went,
Let's do
yeah,
this.
let's do paper currency. We don't want to carry around huge bags of gold. That's ridiculous.
Right.
So
That's
yeah,
another
and-
thing to consider is, what does your currency weigh, right?
right.
So
Right.
in the game that I
Encumbrance.
play in, encumbrance, in the game that I play in, our DM said, at one point he said, you all need to come together and decide what you're going to spend your money on, because you cannot be walking around with this much money. You
Yeah.
need to find a way to store it. You need to find a way to spend it, to get rid of it, whatever it is. But you guys need to talk about it. And
Right.
we eventually decided we were going to invest it and created our own airship business
Wow.
that is making us money as we're out adventuring. But
Nice.
that's a whole nother thing. But consider how much your money weighs, and is it feasible to be carrying around that much when you walk around? What do people
Right.
do if you're rich? Where do they store that money? What do they do
Right.
with it?
Right. I recently had a group of players come across. I mean, my players come across a lot of money actually, and the thing is, money is. I give them a lot of money, but it's hard to spend. It's hard to find things that are worth spending it on. Because I
Right.
don't hand out. We don't have magic shops and shit like that. So recently they buried a pile of money. That was an interesting thing to do, and they went back and it was still there. They made them roll some checks to see how well they buried it and how carefully and how stealthily and so on. So I mean, there's that. What do you carry money in? I mean, you carry it in a purse or a chest or a bag of holding.
Yeah,
There's,
that's another thing to consider.
all these
Yeah.
types of options. Animals, pack animals and stuff. You're going to get raided. Do people know you've got all that money? Because they're going to come for you if you're walking down the street and they happen to know that you are rich. There's going to be thieves, bandits.
The other thing that you made me think about was, at one point we came across a dragon's lair. I think we slew the dragon. There were a couple of sessions where I had missed, and so I found out later that they went back to the dragon's lair because there's no dragon there now, and there's all this gold, all this treasure, but we couldn't figure out how are we going to carry this away? There's way too much. And one of our players ended up coming up with this idea of he had access to a spell where he has a pocket plane. And so he basically opened up this pocket plane and they threw in as much stuff as they could into the pocket plane. And so now we have access to this. However, because we're in the end game and people are dying, characters are dying, if he dies, dies, we no longer have access to that money.
Oh no.
And so it's something that's come up in the game a couple times where he's like, we need a backup plan or else you all are going to lose this money if I die. What's the backup plan? So we haven't figured it out yet, but basically it will be locked out of the bank account is what it is if he dies. So,
oh no.
So something to consider. Okay, so let's see. We talked about, what's it worth? How much does it weigh? what's it
Yep.
called in this region, in any other region. What, we've talked about the physical description. What does it look like? What's the shape, the size, the identifying marks? We talked about coins with holes that can be
Yes.
strung. How do you store all this if
Right.
it's in a weird shape? Like, how is it stored?
Correct.
Um,
Do you have any
Uniformity.
traditions? Are there any traditions surrounding this coinage? I've got
Yeah.
an interesting story if I can throw that at you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So in my campaign world, which is originally it was the giants that settled in this world, and they have these massive, huge, enormous gold coins the size of cartwheels,
Wow.
and they're called Annam strikes, named after the god Annam, who's the father, the all father of the giants. And these are called strikes. So Annam strikes, these massive, huge gold pieces. And once every year, the king of the elves brings one of these out of the vault on a wagon and parades it around the city to demonstrate the wealth of the elves, and then puts it back in the vault. So that's to me, I thought that was quite a cool thing. This
That
idea
is
that they
a
have
really cool thing.
this tradition based around these ancient giant coins that no human could carry one.
Yeah, or
Um,
spend.
or spend it, I mean, and they're priceless. You wouldn't even know what they're worth. They're just worth whatever you could get for them from whomever you could get it, and then you'd have to transport it to them, you know.
Right.
So interesting. I thought that's Annam
That is
strikes.
so cool. Yes, traditions. Because what's funny, I do a lot of on the fly world building sometimes. Just because like they'll ask me like, "Oh, do we see anything interesting here?" And I'm like, "Sure you do." And I just come up with something and then later I go, "Ooh, okay, what does that thing mean? Why did I throw that in there?" So one time the party was traveling and they were on this very long, like Queen's Road, basically from one kingdom to another kingdom. Very
Right,
popular, large road. And for
right.
some reason that I can't recall, I threw in that there was this weird stump on the side of the road that people have taken coppers and just pounded their coppers into this tree. Kind of like a wishing well, but not. Like there's
Right.
just a bunch of coppers on this tree. And so it
Mhm.
looks very shiny and textured, and they all
Cool.
thought that this is like something like special and magical, and it really wasn't. It was just like a
Just a
landmark.
tree.
But
Right.
I almost felt bad that it didn't really mean anything because they wanted it to mean something so bad. And I was like,
Right.
no, it's just a matter of someone did it once and then
Well,
someone
I
saw it and
mean,
decided to copy it. And
one of your deities might choose to bless that tree and so forth. I have a one of my NPCs, Drazael, who's this kind of dwarven gangster who owns this mansion in Vane Gate. The party often work for him doing missions and so on. Whenever they go to his house, I describe how they go through the gate. And outside the front door of the house, there is this statue of Moradin with this bowl of water at the base of it. And anytime a character throws anything from a copper piece to a platinum piece in that bowl of water, I give them inspiration.
interesting. I love it.
Just a
That's a great
little.
idea. And that actually brings me to another point. I mean, we can keep talking, and we're going to keep talking about all the different ways you can world build currency. But here's the thing that I think is really important: you could build all of this out. But I think not all of it is going to be important to the story, right? Like,
No.
not everyone, your party might not care what the shape of the money is and this history of the money if it doesn't necessarily play a
It's
part in
absolutely
the
about your
plot.
group. You can
Right.
totally just use the D&D based currencies and not concern yourself at all with this stuff.
Right, exactly. So, not that we're saying you have to world build all this stuff into it. It's just,
No.
yeah, if it
Yeah.
will add an element to your plot, to the story, to your players, to your world, whatever, then do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. We talked about, where are they made? Do they occur naturally? Like the shells that you were talking about. Do people
Right,
just
right.
use shells in this area and they don't have to make them? They just collect them, and spend them.
I love your
Um,
tree idea, by the way. I'm thinking I'm going to steal that.
oh, really? Let me know
Maybe
what you do with it. Because
if you
mine's
let me,
just,
if I'm
it's just
allowed.
window dressing for me. So yeah, I would love
Right.
to know what you do with it.
Hmm.
Let's see. We already talked about what's it worth. Is it accepted in all places or not?
Right.
Um, oh, yeah, that was the
Oh,
other thing.
yeah.
If you homebrew, your currency, try to keep the values simple. Don't do like, this is worth 1 gold.
0.25 of
Yeah.
blah. Yeah.
Don't make it harder on yourself or your characters or your players, because they will not thank you for it. So,
Yeah, I mean, unless you're trying specifically to do something. For example, the Orcan currency in my world, Sidariel, is a bit weird, and it does have strange values. And the reason for that is I want it to be difficult to spend and use.
see,
You know,
there's a
it's
purpose.
right. There's a point to it. It's not just randomly chosen to make it, just to be fun or different. There's a point to it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's supposed to be a concern. It's supposed to be something that you have to deal with.
So the takeaway from that, folks, is if you don't want your players to do something, make it really difficult. I'm actually going to use that because I
Right.
love that. Oh,
Right.
that's great.
Don't say no. Just make it hard.
Right. Yeah. I love that.
Yes,
That's like a
and.
yes and. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and it's fucking ridiculously hard.
So the other thing to consider, this is always, I think, harder for people because we just live in the now a lot. We don't always
Right.
consider the history of things, but what's the history of your currency? There may not have always been gold pieces, or maybe gold pieces looked different 1,000 years ago than they do now, and they still exist. So you might find some really old treasure. Like, does it look different? You got to kind of world build that too.
Right.
Did it belong to a completely different empire that no longer exists?
Right.
If you're doing a futuristic world, think about the fact that there may have been currency before, but now we're using credits. Like, what happens when you find currency now? How is that
Right.
treated? So the history of the currency is what's you want to delve into.
Yeah.
Oh yes, we were talking about how much currency weighs. Now, you were talking about dollars, right? Paper money. It's easier to carry.
Right.
And
Right.
so especially for rich folks, they're not going to want to necessarily carry 50 pounds worth of stuff. So maybe make the higher denominations weigh less somehow.
It's funny to me that you mentioned dollars and being paper money, because in New Zealand, a dollar is a coin, and a $2 is a coin too. Funnily enough.
Interesting.
I don't have any on me, so I'd show you, but
Oh, no.
I'll have a quick look, see if I can find one.
Yeah, so everyone just think about, in general, 50 coins is roughly 1 pound. So if you're carrying, 100,000 gold, that's a lot of pounds. So,
Here's a currency.
what? Oh, yeah, there it is. Yes. What if there is something like that in your world,
Right.
A
Magic bank cards.
magic bank, yeah, a card of some sort, even if it's like a little wood token, but this token means that
Right.
I have access to the bank of blah blah blah. Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, it's interesting because before we go too far, I also I made a couple of notes on this subject. So you've talked about racial currencies and obviously empires and races and or species, whichever term you prefer. There's also the idea of secret currencies, currencies used by secret societies and so on that might not be obvious to other people. When I was no, I'm not going to go down that road.
Oh,
That's a terrible story. I was going to tell you a terrible story about when I was a kid. We made our own currency and we used chalk. We used blue chalk. That was what was worth to us. Anyway, that's not important. But you could have cursed currencies. In fact, I have a cursed currency in my world. Nobody's figured it out yet, but it's there.
I love it. Cursed currency. Yeah, we haven't even talked about the magic elements in and I didn't even put it in my notes. So we should definitely build that out.
I recently gave a group of players a huge amount of coins, gold coins. They got 1,000 gold coins in a chest, but the person that gave it to them for a specific project and told them that they were marked. So that you can have marked coins. And the way in which they're marked is magical. You can't tell they're marked unless you cast the light cantrip on them.
That's right.
So that you can see that they've been marked with the specific ink or what have you. So yeah, that's another interesting angle, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, think about Pirates of the Caribbean, the first movie. All those coins in the chest. If you take a coin out of that chest, you're cursed. But if you put it back, like, you're okay.
Right,
So,
exactly. Then we have on a sort of a tangentially from currencies, we have ideas like tokens, which could be things like in Vein Gate and in Dagdagiel in my world, you can be given messenger tokens. And so oftentimes, when a player is talking to an NPC and they're like, "How can I contact you?" This happened last night. In fact, this particular noble lady gave them a small bag of messenger tokens. They can take them to any messenger in the city, and that messenger knows where to take it, and it's paid for.
yes,
Right.
that's so
So just
cool.
right? So that's kind of cool. And of course, things like gate passes are possibly tokens too, or a type of currency. You want to get through certain gates, you need one of these. This will get you through a gate once,
Yeah.
you know, like a pass, like you go to a fucking amusement park or
I was
something.
gonna
They give
say
you
like a Chuck E. Cheese, and you only have tokens that you can use for those games.
right,
Yeah.
or a strip club,
Yeah, oh, there you go.
for that matter, you know. But yeah, same basic idea. Yeah.
I
Um,
love that idea. Yeah. I
so
could have like a
that's
gam I have gambling halls in my world, but I had never thought to like you're
right,
going to change your money out for just this type of
right.
token that you're going to spend in the gambling hall, you know? I like
You could
that.
have cursed gambling tokens.
Yes,
So when
because if you
somebody
take the
gives you,
token out of the area, yeah.
well, not only that, somebody gives you I can't pay you any money, but I've got these tokens for the gambling hall, right?
Uh
So you take them away and you go to the gambling hall and they're all cursed and you lose all your money at the gambling hall because you're using cursed tokens.
yeah.
So
Ooh.
they're not worth anything ultimately.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just
See,
whatever.
yeah, we could totally add magical elements to I'm gonna have to
Mm,
think about this now as we move through the rest of this. But
right.
so we've talked about coinage, you know, paper
Yep.
money even.
Paper money,
But what about like
checks.
bars and ingots of, you know, like
Right.
especially if you're
Right.
rich, it's like now you're gonna
Right.
boil this down and make it into bricks because it's easier
Or
to store,
yeah.
or
Yeah.
I don't know.
Ingots, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Bullion.
yeah, so if you have that kind of currency, bars and
Right.
ingots, like what do
Yeah.
they look like? Build all that out.
Yeah.
Um, where do you store them? The regions. The other
Yeah.
thing I wanted to bring up was gems
I was about to
because
say
oh,
gems.
were you?
Yeah.
Okay. You can talk
Yeah.
about gems. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's kind of an obvious thing in the sense that you know you're carrying around huge amounts of coins or ingots or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
You know, you might want to exchange them for a small bag
Mm-hmm.
of gems that you
Yep.
can then trade at you know, you've got to go from Dagdagiel to Vein Gate. It's a 3,000 mile journey, you know. You don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be carrying a huge bag of coins with you. It's a lot of things to carry. It's very heavy, you know. So carrying a small bag of gems, you can sew them into your cloak, you know, you can put them down your sock or hide them in a pocket, a secret pocket somewhere, you know, things like that. So you can't just have them stolen off you. You
Right.
can swallow them too.
You know, and well, I guess it would depend on the type of gems that you have, because I would
Mm,
so here's okay, boy, my brain's going in so many directions all at once. But yeah, depending on the type of gems you have, you got to consider it could be a bad thing. It's a good thing because you have less to carry. Your
mm.
money's kind of consolidated into this
But
pouch.
now you can't spend it.
Yeah, if you end up in a place that is like a, you know, a small hamlet, they're not going to be
Right.
able to
What do you,
change that out for you.
I'll be like, sure, I'll take your massive diamond for that pint of ale.
Yeah, exactly. But so my character that I play in the other game, I purposely made her not care about like physical wealth, physical, like just material items.
Right.
And what has been the frustration of the group is I don't really care about gold. If we get loot, I don't care about gold. I'll take gems because gems are
Mm.
shiny and they're
I'll take
fun.
slaves. Give me
And
some slaves.
what I've learned is whenever we go places, if we are having trouble getting past the gate, if we are having trouble getting information out of people, all I got to do is pull a gem out randomly. I don't even care if I'm pulling out a $5,000 gem because I want a
Right.
pint of ale. I'll
Right.
do
Be
it. And all the players are like, but, and I'm
like,
like, sorry, already done. Like, my character
right.
doesn't care about the value of anything. I just want the result. I want the ale. I want to get through the gate. I want
Right.
to get the
Right.
information.
Oh, I've got this player that's very much like that. She's always what's her name? Gilra. She just hands out gold pieces like they're nothing.
Hmm.
And actually, the player, it was Jojo Jordan, who occasionally comes on here too. He does this in various characters actually. He had another character, Alexander, who ended up getting audited by his house because he was spending too much money on frivolous stuff.
Wow.
That's always fun. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I totally interrupted you a
No,
little.
no, no. That's fine.
Sorry
That's
there.
just that was the thing about gems was like
Banter.
I started carrying them thinking, oh, this is, she doesn't care about money, but she cares about shinies. And then I was like, yeah, but she doesn't really understand the value of them. So sure, she's just going to start spending them. And my whole party has just been so upset with me, but I don't care. It's fun.
Okay, who cares?
And it's not like we've ever, I mean, that's the thing is I've learned
Do
in
they-
D&D, most
Yeah.
parties, I think, like hang on to everything that they have. They're so afraid to use it because they might
Right.
need it for something else. And then you get to the
Right.
end of the game and you have like a shitload of stuff that you could have used that you never did. So
Right.
this character, I'm purposely like, I'm just using everything as I get it. I'm going to leave this world with nothing on me.
Right. I had one
So-
group of players in the Vain Gate Chronicles literally stole a treasure ship,
Oh, wow. A whole ship with treasure.
a whole ship full to the gunnels with treasure.
And then
of course
what do
they
you do with
can't
it then?
do anything with it, and they're
Yeah.
on the run, and everyone's looking for them, and they had to go and hide on a secret island. So, yeah.
Yeah, so gems, everybody. Interesting, lots of pros and cons. And then we already kind of talked about shells, but let's talk about odd currency, right? Something that's not coins or dollars. I found there was a couple things in the lore. There was a place that uses gond bells. They're like small brass bells that are worth about 10 gold. But
Right.
if you use them in this area where there's like a temple to Gond, then they're actually worth double that much. So
Right.
that's an interesting, I don't know what you would do with the bells, but I guess they're used as currency. Interesting.
Right. I have things like teeth.
Yes.
Goblins exchanging teeth.
I
Put them
like
on a
that.
string. You make a necklace of them, so that's how you carry them around as your necklace with all your teeth. And bigger monsters that have bigger teeth are worth more, obviously.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, then
yeah,
you have goblin hunting teams that go out to like
Right.
Yeah, right?
Collecting the currency, and then that shit's worth something.
Yeah.
And actually, on this topic, we should just make a quick little sideline over to the idea of things like resources, because we're living in a world right now where scarcity of things like water are going to become an issue. And
Yeah.
if you watch the movie June, or if you've preferably read the book, Helen Kirkby, read the book.
What's
sorry.
what's the book?
June. Sorry, I'm going to say it in American so that you understand. Dune.
Oh, okay. Yes, Dune.
That's how American. That's my American
It is a
pronunciation.
wonderful book.
It's a wonderful book. And so, of course, water is essentially the most important currency. It's all about the water.
Yeah.
So whatever's scarce in your society, in your game world or whatever, that's likely to be a high priority candidate for currency.
Yes. Yeah. And now we're talking about books, but I think I asked, have you read the Wheel of Time series?
I have not, but I've watched some of the TV series. In fact, I
Okay.
watched all of it that's come out so far.
Okay, so then you wouldn't have seen this yet because it's not in the series. But in the books, there is a society called Aiel people. They're kind of like desert people. And
Right.
same thing, water is very scarce. And I don't want to spoil it, even though the books have been out for like, I don't know, 30, 40 years or something. But there's one Aiel woman who ends up kind of joining like the main group. So now she's traveling to all the same places they're all going to, and she's watching them take like a pitcher of water and just leave it on a table and walk away. And she's just staring at it like, why would you just leave water like unprotected where people can just take it whenever they want?
Right.
Like her reaction is so pure because it's water. And so consider if you're going to do some kind of odd currency and it is scarce like that, what is their reaction if they go away from their society and they see that
Right.
material being just used as,
Sort of mundane.
common day? Yeah.
Right.
So really
Right.
interesting stuff.
Here's another interesting variant too, seeing as we're talking about tabletop role-playing games. As you well know, I like to talk about and run a lot of Vampire the Masquerade. Now, Vampire the Masquerade is largely set in modern times. So the primary currency is, of course, dollars and cents, or whatever country you happen to be running the game in. You could be running it in Botswana or something. So I don't know what currency they use there. And that's not the point here. The point is that vampires, because they live for a very long time, essentially are immortal and have a lot of power. Money's not really worth that much to them. It kind of just flows through and past them in their lives, which seem to go on and on and on and on. So money as a currency, whilst it has some value, is not as valuable as boons. Vampires trade boons, favors with other vampires. And that might come in the form of some sort of act or act of service, or an introduction to a prince, or the creation of a ghoul, or even a childer, a vampire progeny, if you like. Some sort of, favor, basically. So using favors as currency instead of physical stuff is quite an interesting way to go. And if you're playing vampire, that's definitely something that you need to learn and think about and consider at all times, because that's the main currency.
Right. Well, and I would say that that definitely adds a level to role playing, because they would have to decide, like, is this boon worth this
Right.
thing? What's the value here?
Right. And oftentimes it's something like the players have done something wrong, where they've broken one of the traditions or something, even by accident. And they get dragged before the prince, and the prince is like, you've been very, very bad and you should be punished. And they're like, oh no, we're going to die. They're going to stake us. They're going to put us in the sun. Oh God, we're all going to die. And I'm like, well, or you can owe me a boon. And at some point in the future, I'm going to call on you to do a thing.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So that's fun too.
That is
and of
fun.
course that completely works perfectly well in a medieval fantasy setting too.
Exactly.
Or pretty much any setting. In fact, it's a pretty much universal kind of currency.
I would even say, with a futuristic game, that makes a lot of sense too, because they've evolved away from using money. So there's always something else, credits or chits like we talked about. But you could totally use boons as a replacement for money.
Yeah, I mean, everybody does favors for each other. I mean, if you're talking about even in the modern day kind of society, look, as a creative person working in a world full of other creative people where you need to collaborate with other people, like, for example, the show that we're doing right now, we all end up doing favors for each other. And you can keep track of them and tick them off and make sure that the books balance, which is kind of anal and retentive. I mean, I wouldn't really do that unless I was dealing with assholes, but I'm not, so I don't bother with that. But I'm sure that there's a level somewhere where that happens.
Yeah. Oh man, so much fun. Okay, so odd currency. The last thing I had that I had found in the lore was something called Shar rings, where it's basically it's ivory that I think they keep whole, is my understanding, and then they just do slices of this ivory, and each slice is like 3 gold. So I kind of like that idea. Like, instead of storing it in a pouch, you just have this large thing of ivory, and then when you need to spend it, you just slice off a bit.
You could use cheese.
Yeah. So
food's a great currency too, actually. I mean,
food is a good, depending on your setting.
Well, I mean, also like things like if you happen to be in jail in some sort of, depending on what the world is, but if it's a modern
like
game
cigarettes
world,
and stuff.
Cigarettes, exactly. Cigarette as currency, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
There's also
ramen packets.
Ramen packets. Whatever it is, you want it to be small, concealable, and easily carried. These are what are the requirements for your currency in that respect too. Do you want everyone to know that you're carrying it, that you have lots of it, or are you sort of keeping it on the down low? So these are things to think about.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So I think, aside from adding magic to currency, is there anything that you can, because I haven't thought about it, because I don't know why I didn't even think to add it in my notes. Adding magic to currency.
Right. Well, I mean, you can have things like, I mean, when I was talking about the Annam strikes before, those big giant coins, and
Mm-hmm.
they come in a variety of types as well. But of course, nobody really knows what they are or what they were used for because these are 10, 20,000-year-old coins.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them have huge gems encrusted in them and artworks embossed in them and that type of stuff as well. So getting into the descriptions of the coins, I think, can be really interesting. And the descriptions of the currency is quite fun. And you
Yeah.
were talking about that earlier with the different shapes and styles of coins and so on. I love that stuff. I find it really. You can see the face of an ancient 20,000-year-old giant king
Yeah.
printed on this Annam strike. I think that's fucking cool, man.
Okay, not magical, but I thought of something. Okay, so I had seen
Mm,
this thing. I made a post about it. It's on the Dungeon Studios page, but I tend to go out on the interwebs, and when I see something really interesting that gets my
yeah,
brain going, like I
it's your
just want to
brain going.
share it with people. So I had found this coin that someone had created, and on the face of it, it just looks like some scenery with like a dude with a sword, and there's like some kind of a door in behind him, and you realize when you mess with the coin that the sword comes out and you can actually turn the coin and replace the sword in a different section of the coin, and then the doors slide open and there's something
Oh,
like a little picture or something in the coin. So
cool.
I thought, how cool would that be for like you were talking about secret coins, for a society where like the
Right.
picture that's revealed is maybe some kind of a location, a
Message.
clue to a
Right.
location where the secret treasury is, or
Right.
whatever. It could be a magical thing too, like you put the sword back into a different area, and now the coin becomes, I don't know, something. I'm still
Right.
struggling with the magic thing because I'm so caught off guard by it, but I'll just have to I'll have to do that in the retcon rewind next time. Is I'll
Right. I
go,
mean,
here's all the
you
magical
can.
coins I thought of.
Well, obviously, with magical coins, you can have things like illusions surrounding them. That's
Hmm.
that's an obvious thing. You could have coins that cannot be affected by magic. That might be a thing that you could do.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean, it's very easy to take a coin and say this gold coin is a platinum coin, or this copper piece is a platinum coin,
Hmm.
um, and place some sort of enchantment on it. But if you have a coin that repels magic, that might be a thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Huh.
Um,
That would be interesting, especially if like you had it on your person.
right.
Could
Also,
you imagine if you didn't know that it repelled magic, and then all of a sudden like magic
right,
spells aren't hitting you and you're like,
right,
what's new? What's
yeah,
different? Why?
right,
Huh.
yeah. But what
Interesting.
was I going to say? There was something else I had up my sleeve there too.
Uh-oh.
Um,
Magic coins.
right, I do have another example of a magic coin, but I'm waiting for you to hand over to talk about the Sidarial currencies.
Oh,
Shall I cover that?
yeah, no,
Brief?
please do. Yeah, I saw your video. I did not put that stuff all in the notes. So let's talk
Oh no,
about
no,
the
that's
Sidario.
fine. So
Yeah.
in my world, just so I guess this is an example of what I do, and how I use coins, and it's not that detailed. There's only like 2 pages of stuff here, really, and most of it consists of a chart. But of course, you've got your old platinum pieces, gold pieces, electrum pieces, silver pieces, and copper pieces, and they're all kind of values of 10. To make life easier on myself, I decided not to use the D&D system, which is 5 electrum is a gold piece, and I just went with 10 electrum as a gold piece, and 10 silver is an electrum piece. That keeps it very simple. Then you don't have to
Right.
fuck around doing maths. It's all base 10. So beyond this universal system, we have more regional currencies that in some cases can be traded or sold for other currencies. So the high elves and the wood elves have their own currency, and that starts with the annum strikes, which are worth like thousands of gold pieces and don't really have a kind of, and it's unknown what they're even made of, right? Then
Right.
you get, there's a certain type of coin called a Durian crown, named after the good King Durian. They're worth about 100 gold pieces or 10 platinum pieces, and they're made of platinum. And they, of course, have good King Durian's face stamped on them. We have High Brook marks, which are, marks, a type of currency,
Mm-hmm.
which are worth an electrum piece. And they're the most common currency in the city of Hemeth Tirith, or otherwise known as Highbrook, in common. Then they have solarium, which is gold, sol, sun, gold,
Mm-hmm.
alchemy, right? So solarium are gold pieces. Lunarium are silver pieces. Silver, the moon, lunar, blah, 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 back to alchemy. And then Terralian is copper pieces. I don't know where I got that word from. I think I made it up. Right, so that's the kind of Alvan currencies. Then we have the Orcan Empire of the Ungor Ma'ak. Their currency is, they have Ungor tax, or just tax, T-A-K, tax. They're worth about 5 silver pieces, and they're made of steel. Then you have
I love
Rakam bits, or just bits, worth 5 copper pieces, and the Oram Pek, or just Pek, which are worth about 0.25 of a copper piece, just to be fucking annoying. And they're made up. So you can see the sort of difficulty of using and exchanging Orcan currency. But of course, the Orcs don't think about them in terms of points of other currencies. They only
Right.
use their currency. So when you're in the Orcan Empire, you don't actually have to do the maths. You just
Right.
spend the currency based on what the thing costs.
Right.
So it's much simpler in that respect. The Moldrayan Empire, or Protectorate, they have gate marks, which are silver pieces, Ghent marks, which are gold pieces, and Moldrayan crowns, which are platinum pieces. And then we get into the sort of more special currencies. I mentioned the Annam Forge struck coins, or the Annam strikes, extremely rare, impossible to find, named after the creative god of the giants. Enormous wheels of electrum, gold, and mithril. There you go, I did use mithril. Alloy, smelted together in the furnaces of the Fire Lords tens of thousands of years ago during the Age of Dragons. Each
All right,
coin
so
itself is... Right.
sorry, I was not trying to cut you off. I was just going to tell all our listeners this is the example of how you homebrew currency. Go ahead, continue.
So each coin itself is so big and so heavy that it would require an ox and a cart to move any considerable distance. Among the most precious artifacts of the ancient world, Annam strikes, as they are sometimes called, can only be found in number among the few lairs of the most ancient dragons. Much fewer numbers are said to be held by certain royal lineages and wizards. In the present day, any one of these coins could support a city-state for a year. A single annum is presented annually at the Festival of the Wheel or for Corellon Larathian by the High King of Highbrook during a special parade. And then we have dragon coins. And these are kind of different again, forged by evil metallic dragons of a bygone age to bribe men, goblinoids, and elves. These were brewed particularly for that purpose by these evil dragons. These coins are said to cultivate greed and deceit among those who trade with them. To those who are prepared to traffic in this dark currency, a dragon coin is worth approximately 75 gold pieces. They are also extremely light and extremely durable and have been known to be utilized by pirates, smugglers, mercenaries of every race and creed. If they are indeed cursed, these professional soldiers and other disreputable professionals pay no heed. They instead say a mostly forgotten prayer to an ancient dragon goddess. It is said to be an offering just powerful enough to appease her for now.
Interesting.
So there's an example of a cursed coin, and we don't really know what it does. But if you say the name of the dragon queen when you use the coin, the curse doesn't fall on you as long as you are propagating her name. If you don't say her name when you use the coin, then you can expect, at the very least, disadvantage on your next fucking skill check.
Yeah.
Then we have Durian crowns. These are outlawed by the usurper king of Sidarial of Tularathion. These coins were minted during the reign of High King Durian Erethani, said to be of the direct bloodline of the primal elves. One side of these platinum coins depicts a relief of Corellon Larathian, king of the elven gods, while the reverse depicts an ancient platinum dragon, Bahamut. So another coin. Then we have the drow currency. They're called Zorans, made of silver primarily. Long rows of square or rectangular silver coins on strings. 10 Zoran to the gold piece. This is DZORAN. For me, the drow, everything the drow does, lots of drow words and names start with DZ, like Drizzt. There's
Yeah.
lots of noises. So 10 Zoran to the gold piece, minted with the faces of the matriarchs of Abnog Gur and the image and symbols of Lolth, said to be cursed, bad luck to use on the surface. So there's the sort of most simple outline of the coins that I use in my Sidarial
Yeah.
currencies.
This
Um,
is why people pay you the big US bucks, because you homebrew your currency quite well. That was a lot of info.
Well, so in my sci-fi universe, I've got a whole other sort of pile of stuff here, right? So the currency in this is a game called Primum Solum that I haven't finished working on yet, and I'm still making AI art for it, and it's going to take years, I suspect. I may die before this happens, but
Don't say
anyway,
that.
the primary currency in this world is called e-bits. So I'll just read you a brief bit about this. By the year 31056 post-human era, the most common form of currency is the e-bit, an electronic currency used across the datasphere networks using EPCOMs and e-bit protocols. It is a decentralized currency stored on the ISQN2 network anonymously, and like a physical currency, cannot be hacked or taxed without the owner's expressed permission. Because EBITs use the ISQN2 networks, this is a whole thing, I'm not going to go into that, they are utilized by all factions almost universally, with the exception of a few pirate states and rogues who prefer to stay off the grid anyway. Although even they most likely still have a few EBIT accounts amongst them. The EBIT has been now in use since before the Sixth War, despite numerous attempts to create state and factional currencies. They have never worked out successfully or been especially popular. The EBIT encryption has proven unbreakable, requires no human management, and too many economies are based upon it to transfer to a new method. The currency stacks up as such. You have EBITs, which are called E's, E-bytes, which are called EBs, and EKs, which are just EK. Then you have megs, gigs, and teras, which are also higher standards of currency. Examples: 90 E's will buy you a drink, 850 to 2,000 E's will buy you a room for the night, 1,000,000 E's will buy you a Transtech Vectorcraft or a hover car, and 1,000,000,000,000 E-bits will buy you a C-Class M-Core Starship engine. Loans and overdrafts are available from ISQN2 as well as the ones from clans, houses, sponsors, certain corporations, employers, gangs, and shady loan shark outfits. Interest and payment schedules range depending on one's capacity for income and the organization's lending criteria. So there you go. That's two different currency sets that we've homebrewed for two different games and two different genres.
There you go.
Any questions?
So that's, yeah, for our listeners, that is a good example of really world building your currency for your world and just coming up with all those details.
Well, it's a matter of detail, I reckon. You know, the
Yeah.
devil is in the detail. People ask questions. It's better to have lots of detail in your head, then you can dumb it down or simplify it for whatever questions come. And then if you
Right.
feel that you have an opportunity to add some extra lore there because the game's going slowly or whatever, you can feed in more detail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having that detail is quite handy, I find.
So you mentioned something about changing the value of, I think it was Electrum in your game.
Right,
So
right. Yeah.
this leads in really well to what I was going to start sharing, which is like the tips, tricks, and tools you
Right.
could use for helping to world build your currency. So one of the things I saw online was people said, if you're having a hard time understanding the value of what
Electrum.
something, not
Oh,
necessarily Electrum, but like what a shield should be worth,
right.
because there's no real set table for D&D of like, this magic shield is worth this and this
Right.
sword, because it's all about the rarity of the item, and now that's what determines the value of the shield. So what these folks have done, do you have to go? Okay, I'm just going to say it out loud.
No, no, no. I'm,
Oh,
I'm back. I'm back. I'm good.
okay.
I just had to hand something over to somebody.
Oh, no problem. Is they decided to change the exchange rate in their world to be similar to US dollars. So like gold is equal to $1, silver is equal to a dime, electrum's a nickel, and copper's a penny. And that for some reason in their game really helps everyone understand the value of these things.
Yeah.
So that was going to be one of my tips and tricks to share with folks. If you're having trouble with this whole 10 copper is a silver and 10 silver is a gold, then change it up so that the exchange rate makes sense to you guys, wherever you live, whatever that exchange rate is.
Essentially the opposite of what I'm doing, which is to make it as impossibly incomprehensible as I possibly can.
Yeah. But you changed the electrum rate because that made sense. So
yeah.
Okay, so the other thing I was going to tell everyone was if you're going to homebrew and this is your first foray or it just seems very overwhelming, then just homebrew with a light touch. Like we showed in the very beginning, like you can still use standard currency and just throw in like one little detail and that's enough to like really bring people in and kind of make your world feel a little more fleshed out.
Right.
Okay, so here's the other thing I found. I found a couple of online tools because I don't know, like naming your currency could be hard. Like you've come up with really great names. Like you have like the E bits but it's shortened to like E's and EBs and EKs. Like that's really cool. But I know that there's some people that like would struggle to come up with a name for their currency. So there are online tools just to generate names of currency, not values, but just even a name. And then there are also sites that will generate their values, what they look like, their exchange rate. Oh yeah, there's all kinds of online tools. So just Google it up and you could even find, actually, I think I found a site that will also provide a reference sheet. So it's created this currency and now it's going to give you a quick reference sheet of like one night in an inn would cost this much of this type of currency that we just created for you. One meal would, so that's really helpful. Let's see.
Yeah, those sorts of tables are useful, and I find myself often referring to the DM screen that I have. My pretty standard D screen. GM, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And because there's a nice little table on the back of that gives you some very simple stuff. How much does an inn cost for a moderate meal? How much does a blah, blah, blah cost? That stuff comes up all the time.
Yeah.
And as you get to know it and become familiar with it, you're able to kind of start guesstimating what you think other things should cost. And nothing, you should as a DM, I think it's cool to not charge what's listed. You should make every place, every proprietor, every trader, every merchant charge different rates. Some of them have better rates, some of them have worse rates. How far do you have to go to get the thing? If you have to go outside the city to get the thing, maybe it's cheaper. If it's right there and it's convenient, maybe it's more expensive. That type of stuff.
That's actually a really great point, because that's another way to kind of build lore into your world is like you have two warring traders and one hikes their price up a little bit and then you could start getting into a bidding war or get a discount rate with one if you do some kind of a adventure for them and now they'll give you a 10% off deal.
So
you could really play into that.
Boons.
Exactly.
Right.
So I love that.
Yeah.
All right. So
how do economies work?
Do you have any like other? There wasn't a whole lot online other than just generators, as far as like
specifically
tips,
for
tools
for coming up with currencies.
Yeah.
Well, I always refer to the holiest of holy books, Liber Google.
Exactly.
That is the most powerful and useful tool available to man right now, I think. But I will say that probably I've been doing a fucking ridiculous amount of AI art over the last few weeks, and I've just made so much stuff. But my next project may in fact be coins.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
A whole bunch of different coins. That will be fun.
I am, like I said, after doing this research, I am very interested in building this out in my world just a little more.
Right.
So
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think maybe it's another thing. I guess it's interesting that's related to the whole topic of currency is like things like vaults and chests, and where do you keep coins, how do you keep them safe, security, that type of stuff all relates to this. How do you transport them? And I guess we covered a lot of the stuff in terms of gems and things. um, but yeah, the chests and boxes and all of that type of stuff, definitely worth thinking about. And you could have there might be a certain type of chest that is highly recognizable as belonging to a certain group of people,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because it has their colors on it, or it's built in a certain style, and it has a certain type of lock, that kind of stuff. And then we could go back into traps and puzzles too, if you wanted to.
Right, yeah, it's like one thing touches another thing, touches another thing. So yeah, you build out
Right,
your currency, then you start thinking about, well, how do they manage
right.
this currency, which then might help you world build your
Yeah,
societies or your regions, and then yeah, you
yeah.
just keep going.
I think just on the general topic of world building, and it refers to everything that we're talking about, but we're talking about currencies right now. How do you find a way to make whatever you're home brewing or whatever you're including in your game, whether it's actual canon lore or it's your own stuff, you need to make it somehow important and emotional. It should have an emotional value to the players and to yourself as well, because then you're going to convey it as emotional as well. And so
Yeah.
if you have, like, for me personally, I really love these giant anim coins, these anim
I do
strikes, and
too.
there's an emotional component to that. And that's what makes it a story. I mean, nobody gives a fuck if it's just, oh, we're just trading. It's just a big piece of metal or whatever, or it's just like another gold piece. But when
Yeah.
it has some kind of story to it, because it's the narrative that creates those emotions, the connections to ideas that are universal, that gives us a kind of, that's what makes it more fun. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's my point. Point
So
made.
that leads great into the weekly world building,
Right.
and we're gonna. I'm so here's what I did. I went online and I was just trying to kind of generate like random societies or locations to kind of
Right.
see like what currency would we put into this area or this world,
Right.
right? And I did one in fantasy because we talk heavy about fantasy, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of lore already around that.
Right.
But I did a few sci-fi examples. So the first
Cool.
one for fantasy was, imagine that there's a fallen primordial or titan from like forever ago. So it's just a
Right.
huge bone, like, I mean, think, I'm trying to think of the scale to help you imagine, like
So
taller,
colossal.
colossal, like taller than the tallest size skyscraper,
Right.
bones that just extend for like as far as you can see,
Miles.
and
Right.
cities have popped up underneath it or in the
Right.
bones, even like if the bones are
Cool.
that huge. So
Right.
what kind of what kind of currency do you think you would imagine, maybe, and just kind of just with that
Right.
setting alone, not even
Right.
world building anything into it?
Well, I guess, I mean, my first impression, if I'm allowed to say,
Yeah.
would be, imagine people that climb up these bones and
Mm-hmm.
extract pieces from them.
Yeah.
And the higher the pieces come from, and maybe they've been exposed to different weather conditions, or they have a different age or different kind of aspects of the bone. And you could make a currency out of that's
Yeah.
worth more. Maybe the ivory of different bones and different parts of the bones might be worth more or less.
Oh yeah, and then you could even, oh, that's crazy, because then the different names and values would be like, this comes from the tibia, so we would name this,
Right.
but this comes from the head or the teeth, like you
Right.
said.
Right.
This, oh my gosh,
I mean,
they
that
could
and that
just,
just feeds immediately back to my goblin thing, because
yeah,
now I'm going, yeah, why they don't just have to use teeth? They could be trading finger bones and other
yeah,
bones, and the bigger the bones, maybe the more they're worth.
right.
Imagine what a dragon's skull's worth, or even a dragon's fang compared to an orc fang.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking of, I don't know if this is currency, this is probably more world building, but if
Mm,
there was like a skull to this thing, that area would be completely like shaded with maybe like, wherever the eye holes are, there's a little bit of sun coming in, but that's like the shaded
right,
area.
right.
So I'm now envisioning that to be like the
You
Las
live in there.
Vegas, the Atlantic City, the gambling,
Ah,
because it's dark all the time. And so there's some kind of special currency over there.
your
I
temple
don't know.
too.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
temples. Oh,
temples. You
yeah.
build, and temples holy currencies too. Some gods are more or less kind of au fait with
Mm-hmm.
the idea of capitalism and currency and competition, and using the idea of fiat currencies and having currencies that are based on something else.
Yeah.
Like gold standard, and we used to have the gold standard. I mean, there's a rumor going around that the reason the West invaded places like Northern Africa, Libya, is because they stopped using the gold standard, and that was
Uh,
going to undermine the American dollar. And we
Interesting.
don't want
Yeah.
that. So the whole wars are fought over currencies,
Right.
and
Exactly.
people that create new currencies, like, we're going to stop using your currency now. We're going to create our own currency. Fuck you.
Yeah.
You know
You know
that
what else I started thinking of was, instead of, because I was thinking about the shape of the currency, right? Instead of it
right?
being like coin shaped, or because they're having to carve it. What if they're like bone shards?
Mm,
The larger the shard, then the more
yeah,
this costs, or the shape of. There's like
right,
you know how people will, what's the word I'm thinking of? They'll take the little thing and look at gems, and they'll have the clarity and the cut. Like there's
right.
that whole aspect to
Carrots,
the shards, bone
right?
shards. I like that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool.
So that was one fantasy setting, really quick and
One example.
easy.
All right.
So now for sci-fi, here's what I did. All I did was generate like the name of a locale, and just the name alone already inspired me. And so I'm gonna shout these out. Okay, so the first one, the name that was generated was the Industrial Complex in Low Earth Orbit. And my
Right.
my immediate, I don't even know what this place looks like, but I thought low Earth orbit, they still have gravity. So, but it's like slightly lighter than Earth's
Right.
gravity, but not by much. So my first thought was, okay, so nobody lives on Earth. Everybody lives off Earth, and the currency is gravity. Because if you want to have gravity, you get to go to this industrial complex in low Earth orbit.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
trying to think like what that would look like. Like
Well,
maybe
I mean,
People sleep better in gravity, so they would
well,
pay. I
yeah,
don't know.
and
Yeah,
there's all sorts of reasons you want gravity. Bone
yeah.
density, for example.
Bone
You lose bone
density.
density
Yeah.
over not having gravity, and there's all sorts of illnesses that arise from it as well, because your blood doesn't flow through your body the same way,
Right.
because your heart's pumping blood in all directions at the same, at the same level, the same amount of difficulty,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Special medical procedures, right? Maybe could only be done if there's
Right.
gravity.
Yeah, there's
Um,
lots of things that certainly require gravity, and you can have things like gravity fed energy things. I mean,
yeah.
hydroelectric, for example, is essentially gravity,
Yeah.
that type of thing. But yeah,
Gravity
fascinating.
as currency. I was like,
Gravity
oh
is
man, I
currency.
want to dig into that so much more because that was so fascinating to me. But just that alone, so
Right,
cool. Just generating a
right,
name. So the next name
absolutely.
that was
Yep.
generated was the terraforming complex on New Yellowstone. So
Wow.
I took that as like Yellowstone Park, and
Right. Yeah.
some post-apocalyptic thing has happened, and now Yellowstone is like the civilization, and it's now
Right.
New Yellowstone. So one little fact I had learned about Yellowstone is that half of the world's hydrothermal features are there.
Right.
So
It's a
then
super volcano.
it's a super volcano. So I was thinking, if it's a post-apocalyptic thing, heat as
Right.
currency. This is the
Right.
world's heat generator now.
Right. Right.
So I don't know. It
Well, that's right. I mean, this is stuff that's universal. We need it as people, as humans, as societies.
yeah.
That's what makes it a currency. That's great.
So like, the masses just kind of they all live around this new Yellowstone. The further
Right.
away from it you are, the poorer you are.
Right.
If you're living in there, and maybe you find ways to store this geothermal
So,
heat, or
so
work
is
with it,
that
power it.
currency, or is that the base? The currency is that what the currency is based on? Like, we have carbon credits, for example, in
Right.
modern society, and so carbon is kind of a currency. It's a kind of a reverse currency
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
There's also the notion that debt is currency.
Yeah.
We get people selling debt to each other, big
Yeah.
financial organizations that purchase huge amounts of debt off other companies, loaning companies, and then change the interest rate so they can make money off it. stuff like that.
Interesting. See, so now I'm thinking, okay, so not everyone in the world can fit around Yellowstone. So now there's huge companies that come in and purchase the heat that they can from Yellowstone and
Right.
bring it to the outside world, but they have it at a massive upcharge, you know?
Right. I mean, power, electricity. I mean, you can store that in batteries, right? So batteries
Yeah.
could be worth a lot
Yeah.
um, in certain ways. Sunlight.
Yeah. Yeah, sunlight too. I mean, yeah, think about, oh, this is, see, there's so much to think about, and all I did was just generate a name. So
Right.
it's really cool. Okay, and then the last one was called the Monolith of Time on Planet X.
Right.
And not that it has to be on another planet, but the fact that time is a currency. Have you ever seen that movie? I think it's called In Time, and it has Justin Timberlake in it. It's not,
No,
I know.
no,
It's Justin
haven't seen it.
Timberlake. But the concept of the movie is that um everyone has like a not a watch, but they have something on them that keeps track of this time that's always running down, and when the time
Right.
runs down to zero, you die. So the
Right.
time is literally your life. And the
Right.
rich people live forever and they look youthful and they live forever, and the poor people are like living day to day with just
Haggard,
24
dying
hours.
quickly.
Right.
Right. Damn. And
So
living day to day to keep the currency up, so they have just enough to make
just
one
enough
day
to
at a
live
time.
that day. Yeah.
And
So
yeah, right. So they've worked hard.
that's time is currency. That is a really great example. I loved that. But I was also thinking, like, how else could you spin it besides this is how long you get to live? And I was
Have you?
thinking,
Yeah.
go, no, go ahead.
Have you seen or read the anime Death Note?
Oh, yes.
Right. So you remember Ryuk? He makes a deal with Light. What's his name? Light Agame, the
Yeah,
main
I can't
character.
remember the name. Yeah.
He makes this deal where essentially he gives up half his life, and he doesn't know how long his life is, but he gives up half of it in order to become more powerful.
Uh
And
huh.
so there's sort of this deal that he's making. It's like a pact. It's like a patron pact, a warlock pact almost. But
Yeah.
again, it goes back to the boons favors kind of ideal, but more sealed, more kind of contractual.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that idea. I didn't even think about it as like a warlock pact, but you're right. That does sound kind of like that. Like, I'm going to give you more power, and in exchange, you're giving
Right.
me
Because that's what a
time.
currency is, right? Is an
Yeah.
exchange of something, goods or services.
Yeah.
It's a, I guess, an arbitrary thing that I don't know. We need an economist to tell us what a currency is properly.
Right. So I was thinking, instead of time running out and then you die, what if as a currency, let's say, I'm just imagining it physically as a coin, but it doesn't have
Mm,
to be a coin. But let's say you have a 10-minute coin, right? 10 minutes of time. And you can, for those 10 minutes, the world stops except for you. So you have 10
right,
minutes that you can complete something a little bit faster, or like
right,
just get 10 minutes to yourself, by yourself, quiet, like whatever it is, but you can
right.
free, everyone freezes except for you. Now imagine
No,
if you're rich, like what you could get done,
right,
and to everyone else it just seems like you are so productive, but
right,
you're just
right,
using your time wisely.
right. It's kind of a metaphor for what does happen anyway, in a way. I mean, if you've got lots of money, you can pay other people to do the stuff.
Exactly, yeah. Your
So it's
your
sort of,
money is worth your time, or whatever the
yeah,
phrase is.
yeah,
Yeah.
time is money, is't it? Right?
Yeah.
That's what they say. Time is
Yeah.
money. So, yeah. And the
So
thing is,
that's
yeah,
oh
and it's
no, that's
interesting
all.
too, because like if you think about what are the things that are worth the most to people presently, real estate is one of the biggest things that people want and want to have. We all want to own a house.
Mhm.
Uh, because the houses are ridiculously expensive now.
Yeah.
Even vehicles are ridiculously expensive, but houses particularly. And gold. I mean, what the fuck can you do with gold? There's nothing you can. It's not useful. You know, it's sort of a weird thing to base a currency on, honestly. But yeah, you'd think you would base it on something like, I don't know, a metal that you can make stuff out of.
Honestly, now that we've had this discussion, it's getting me thinking, like, that would just make a really interesting plot point to your world, is if the standard currency becomes less valuable as some new thing becomes the currency in your world, and that your
Right.
players have to start playing through this and realizing, like, and
Right.
now we got to go get this thing because this is what's worth something now.
Souls as currency.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
all right. So that, I mean, just world building. All I did was generate names and bing, bang, boom, lots of ideas being thrown about. I love it.
Awesome.
It's my favorite
Awesome.
thing about world building.
Yeah, it's
So,
fantastic, isn't it?
yes.
Great
So
work.
this is the point in the show, everyone, where I tell you to please remember to like and share and subscribe. Please support us so that we can continue to give you this very entertaining chatter that we have between me and Russell. I love it. But yeah, come check us out on the website, on Dungeon Studios website. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook. We have TikTok. And then, as I mentioned before, whenever the shows get posted to podcast format, you will find us on all the podcasting platforms: Amazon, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our website, and yeah, wherever you get your podcasts.
If you've heard it, we do it.
Yes. And then come join us on Discord, because we're always looking for creatives. We like to hang out on Discord and just chat away and share memes. And so come find us and hang out with us.
And we play music videos between during our breaks. And so if you
Yes.
happen to be a music content creator and have music videos that are actually good and that people will like, send them to us and we'll check them out and see if we want to play them on our stream.
Yes. And if you
Yeah.
want to do that, come find us on Facebook. Send a private message on our Facebook page. That would probably be the best place to send that.
Cool.
All right.
So there you
So,
go.
yeah, I think that's it for our show. It's a short one, but we're on a holiday week, so we'll just let everybody go. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for listening to us. Thanks for sharing us. And just want to end it and say that these days can be fun days when you talk nerdy with friends.
There you go.
All right, everybody. Have a good week.
Over and out. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.